is Deborah Courtney, and I'm the creator of the EMDR Journey board game. I thought it would be helpful for some clinicians out there that haven't seen the game or haven't worked with it before to just get a brief introduction to what it is, how I created it, and how to use it to see if it's something that would be helpful for you in your practice, your EMDR practice with children. So here it is. This is the EMDR Journey board game. I created this a couple of years ago after I got trained in EMDR. I got trained with EMDR HAP, and I started to use it in my practice, but found that I was feeling a little bit insecure about starting to use it with my younger clients, so my children, my adolescents. And I started making tools in practice to help myself feel more comfortable with the process. That led to the creation of this game. It came together, I'm pretty proud of it, it came together nicely. So here's the board. This is the board game. You'll see it starts here in the rough, rocky water, and it's a journey across the ocean into the calmer beach area. Each step across the journey corresponds to a phase of the EMDR methodology. So we'll get a little bit more into that later on. But this is the board for the game, so let's set that down. And then here are all the different pieces that I will show you. We have a safe place and a calm place card. This is for your client to be able to pick up at any point in the game when they are needing to go to their safe place. We put that on this spot on the board, so it's there and it's accessible to them. We have a stop sign. Again, this is for your client to feel another sense of security in the process, that they have control over their work. So we give this to the client, and they can hold on to that and pull it out whenever they need it. We have a feeling finder. This is a nifty little gadget that Anna Gomez was gracious enough to lend me the idea for. It's a feeling finder where they search their body to find their feelings in their body. A lot of kids get very creative with this, and they start beeping when they find feelings. So they may say, get to their heart and go beep, beep, beep. So this is their feeling finder. They get to hold on to that. What else do we have here? We have feeling faces. So we have feeling cards, and on each card is a different feeling and a feeling face. So for instance, here's shy, here's sorry, let's see, sorry, frustrated, happy, and so on. So anxious. There are a bunch of these feeling cards, and those go right over here on the board. We also have, we have our yucky thought cards. So these are our negative cognitions as we know them, but for this game we call them yucky thoughts. And on each card there's a different yucky thought. So here's just some examples. I'm not lovable, I'm not good enough, I am ugly, I am bad, and so on. There's also, let me see, a blank one. There's a blank of every card in the game, so that if a client doesn't find one that fits for them, they can create their own. So that's something that some clients do. The yucky thoughts go over here. Then we have our good thoughts, which we know as our positive cognitions. So I'll read you a couple of those. I can succeed, I am strong, I am safe now. Those are some examples of our good thoughts. Okay, what else do we have? We have our experience cards. Our experience cards are at the beginning of the journey, and this is when we're identifying our target with our client. I'm going to walk you through the whole game, so we'll come back to these. We also have this nifty little dial here, which is one of my favorite components of the game. Sometimes if I'm not playing the whole game with a client, I'll just take this out and have them hold on to it and use it throughout session. On one side of the dial, we have our SUD score, so how upsetting it is. And it ranges from 0, and under 0 is kind of like a smiley face, and it goes all the way to 10, which is our very, very sad face. And on the other side of the dial, we have our VOC scale, how true it feels. And again, this ranges from 1, which is not really true face, to 7, which is very, very true face. So this is a nifty little gadget. What else do we have in here? We have the player pieces that the client can choose who they'd like to be on their journey to represent them. They can pick a fish to swim through the ocean, a seagull to fly over the ocean, or a boat. So they get to pick their player piece. Also, some clients of mine like to use their own piece if they have a little toy that they're very connected to, or something that is kind of helps them feel safe. They'll use their own player piece across the board as well. Now, we have a drawing pad for drawing the target, so that goes to the client. These are the directions of the game. So it's very detailed. It tells you everything that I just went through, what all the items are and how they work. And it gives you detailed directions of what to do on each space of the journey. Okay? So this is very helpful to have for the clinician. And the therapist guide. Now this is what the therapist holds on to while they're playing the game with the client. I made this especially with newly trained clinicians in mind, because I know sometimes getting used to the methodology and the protocol can be a little intimidating, and you might worry that you're going to forget a step in the game. So this is everything from the methodology as you're trained, either by the EMDR Institute or HAP or a private EMDR approved trainer. So what you learn in training is in this therapist guide. Some of it word for word, some of it's been adapted a little bit, but all of it's been approved by the EMDR Institute themselves. They went through it all and approved that it did match up with the methodology and was accurate. So you'll see how this works. Every page on this guide corresponds to the space number on the board. So for instance, you'll see this is number 1. Page 1 corresponds to space 1 on the board. Okay? So I'm going to read you through how this works. Let's pick the boat for this journey. So we start off in the rocky water. Essentially, that's where the traumatic target, right? That's where we're in the target right here in the beginning. I'm going to read through the therapist guide with you. So at stage 1, it's let's pick an experience card and decide what you will focus on in your journey today. So this is where our experiences card comes in. Now these experience cards are just kind of, they're keywords to get the client to think about what target they want to focus on. So for instance, a time you felt embarrassed, a time you felt sad, a nightmare you've been having. There's a therapist turn. Think of the time when blank happened. So if you've been working with your client on a traumatic experience and you want to focus on that one, you work together to say, you know what, I think that one's a really important one for us to target. So there are these are here just to kind of open up the dialogue between the therapist and the client around what are we going to focus on as the target today in our session. Once the target's picked, the client moves to space number 2. On space number 2, this is when we're getting the client to think about the target in their head. So it says, picture the worst part of that experience in your head and draw it on the sketch pad. So there's the sketch pad here. The client draws the worst part for them. Now, you might be wondering, like, why are we having the client draw? Why do we even have these experience cards? And really, when I was doing some research on, I do play therapy in my practice as well. And just the research on play therapy and creative therapies in general is just that developmentally for children, it can be difficult to be abstract sometimes. And the tangible and the visual aids of every step can be really helpful for them, right? So for a number of reasons. Firstly, because that's developmentally where they are at, to be able to see and touch, and sensory-wise, it's very helpful to grasp the information. But also, it's a little bit safer. They can project out onto the game their experience and the whole process, so they can project the target out by the drawing of it, they can project, you know, even through the discussion of what they're going to focus on. Somehow the cards and being able to hold them and go through them helps the projection process of taking a little bit outside of themselves if they're a little bit scared of the work that's going to be done. So that's just a side note there. Now, step 3. Look at your drawing, think about the time, and pick any card from the yucky thoughts pile that fits what you think about yourself when you look at that picture. So in this stage is where they are identifying their negative cognition or cognitions. So you give the client the yucky thought cards at this point. They go through them. And what most clients do is they pick out a couple. They'll wind up picking out, I'm not lovable, I have to be perfect. Whichever ones they pick out, they then keep in front of them. So now in front of them, I'm going to pretend that I'm the client as well. So I'll have my drawing of the target and my negative cognitions. So everything is visual for me. And then once they do that, they move to step number 4. And at step 4, it's now pick any card from the good thoughts pile that you would like to think about yourself instead. So this is where we're going through the good thoughts to what does the client want to replace? What positive cognition do they want to put in place? So again, they go through, and maybe they say, I am lovable. They want to think that, and I am beautiful inside and out. So whichever ones, maybe it's 1, maybe it's 4. I let the clients be I stay where they're at with this. If they pick out a bunch, we go with them. If they pick out just 1, we go with that one. So again, everything's in front of them. We move on to step 5. How true does that good thought feel to you now? From 1, not true at all, to 7, very true. Pick up the dial and turn it to the number. So that's where our VOC comes in. The client picks up the dial and maybe they say a 3, feels a 3. So then they can keep that in front of them. Then we move on to 6. 6 is look at your picture and say your yucky thought out loud. Go through the feeling cards and pick out the cards that show how you are feeling now while you think about that time. So this is where the feeling faces come in. So they look at their picture, they look at their yucky thoughts, and they say, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry, and I'm feeling, let's go with sad. Okay? So they pick out their feelings and then put those back. Okay, now we move on to 7. Now look at your picture, your yucky thought, your feeling cards, and think about that time. How upset do you feel now from 0, not at all, to 10, extremely upset? Pick up the dial and turn it to the number. So this is where our SUDs come in. So they're identifying how upset they are at this time. Maybe they say a 7, okay? And that's down. And again, being able to see the faces of emotion attached to the number, I think for children, it makes it a lot easier to grasp what the scales mean. So that's really why I did that with the faces. I just think it's a lot more tangible for them. Okay. And then they move on to 8. And at number 8 is when they use the feeling finder. So use the feeling finder to find where you feel these feelings in your body. So what I'll usually have them do is I have them pick this up and we'll go one by one. So I'll say, okay, you pulled out frustrated. Why don't you try to find where you find that? And again, this is where they can get a little creative with this feeling finder. So they start searching and maybe they say, oh, I feel it here in my head. Some kids will start beeping. Some kids will say, no, you know, it takes them a couple of times to go through their whole body. And you really have them keep searching until they find it, okay? So it's, I feel frustrated in my head. And then I'll say, and where do you feel the anger? And then it's, you know, I feel it in my stomach. And how about the sad? And maybe they say they feel it in their heart. So this really helps them get, again, it allows them to feel a little bit safer, I think, with finding the feelings and identifying it in their body. So then at this point, when we're getting to number 9, we're getting to the island. On the island is where bilateral stimulation happens. So I did that for a reason. I did that because if a client doesn't fully reprocess a target in one session, this kind of gives you a grounding space to come back to. So when you review in your next session, you can quickly go through the beginning stages, pulling out the work that they had already done, but yet you're more likely coming back to the island and you're going to jump into the bilateral stimulation again. So that's why the island gives us that grounding point to do that. So I'll read number 9 to you. It says, now you're on the island and we're going to stay here for a little bit. Take your picture, your yucky thought, pay attention to where you found your feelings in your body, and follow my fingers. Again, I wrote a note here to the therapist that says, this is when the therapist begins bilateral stimulation. The therapist should replace follow my fingers with whatever language is appropriate for the type of BLS they are using, whether it's eye movements, tactile, or auditory. In between sets, the therapist should say, take a deep breath and tell me what you notice. Any thoughts, feelings, or sensations in your body. You can use your words, the feeling cards, the sketch pad, or anything you want. The therapist witness and assist processing. This again is a note to the therapist. Therapist witnesses and assists processing. When there is no change for 2 sets, pick up the original drawing and ask the client what is coming up for him or her now. If there is no change, move to space number 10. Okay, so we get to 10. And when you think of that first picture you drew, how upset do you feel now from 0, not at all, to 10, extremely upset? So this is when they go back to their dial to do their SUDS rating. If it is higher than a 1, go back to space number 9. If it is a 1 or 0, go to space number 11. So this is where you'll see, the client will alternate between 9 and 10 for a while, as long as bilateral stimulation needs to go on, just as in a traditional EMDR session, right? You take the SUDS rating, if it's not at a 0 or a 1, we're going to do more bilateral stimulation, more reprocessing of that memory. So you go back to 9 and be doing more bilateral stimulation. So they stay on the island until it gets to a 0 or a 1. And all of that is explained in here. So once we get to 11, this is where we say, pick up your good thought card, read it aloud, and see how true it feels now from 1 to 7. So this is when we're doing our second VOC rating. So they go back to their dial. They see that they were at a 3, and now maybe they're at a 5 or a 6. Okay, so they get to see visually that growth that was made in that thought. I wrote a note here to the therapist that says, therapists should use BLS to install and continue installation as long as the material is becoming more adaptive. If it is less than a 6, identify what the blocking belief is and reprocess that belief. Once the VOC becomes a 6 or a 7, move on to space 12. So we move on to space 12. This is where we're doing the body scan. So I have the client use the feeling finder often for this again. And it says, scan your body from head to toe and tell me if you find any tightness or weird sensations in your body. So you have them go from the top of their head all the way through down to their toes. I have a note to the therapist that says, therapists should begin BLS to reprocess any reported discomfort or to strengthen any positive sensations. Once the body is clear or all positive, move to 13. So we move on here. And at 13, this is where we do our safe place or calm place meditation. So I have the client pick up the safe or calm place, and it's when I lead them through that meditation to take them to that place. This place should be established before you're beginning working with the EMDR journey. It's part of your preparation work. So what I should have said actually is that phases 1 and 2 of EMDR methodology are not included in this game. That work is done before you would implement the journey game. So history taking and preparation, which including developing your calm place, developing your safe place, other grounding techniques, other affect shifting techniques should be done before any of this work is done. So you would already have the safe place, the client would already have the safe place established with you, and you would take them to their particular safe place at this stage in the game. So when that's done, they can put that down. And then they would move on to 14. And at 14, it's, you did a great job on your journey and did some very good work. How are you feeling? What did you learn? What is the best thing you can say about yourself now? Okay. And then at 15, it's, you've made it to the beach, great job. Would you like to leave any yucky stuff that you worked on today with me so you don't have to take it with you? And then I have a little note to the therapist here. The therapist should create a secured space with the client and allow him or her to put whatever yucky stuff from the journey in it. So often, you know, my clients have different ones in my office. Some of them might use my desk drawer, some of them might use my big pocketbook, whatever it is. I have them use their imagination to whatever yucky stuff from this journey that they just went on that they want to keep in there with me. They don't have to take out of the office with them. And I like doing that little guided visualization with them to end. Also, a lot of validation. I know all you clinicians know this already, but a lot of validation about the work that they did do on this journey. Also reassurance if they didn't get to a 0 or 1, that's okay. There's no rush. So next time we'll come to the island again and do some more reprocessing. So that's it in a nutshell. Trying to think of some of the most common questions that I get. Some of them are the ages that I use it with, and really I've used it with pretty much every age. I've used it with children as young as 3, and I've used it with adult clients as well. People ask me that, can you use this with adults? And yeah, some of my adult clients really like it. Again, I think just because it allows kind of a place for projection a little bit. And what I see in my practice is not that the projection is so intense that the work isn't being internalized, because it definitely is. The processing is very similar to a typical EMDR session. During bilateral stimulation, there is, you know, a similar intensity level of processing. So I've used it with mostly children and teenagers, but definitely some adults really enjoy it. I've also been asked if it's appropriate for clients with developmental disabilities, and I say absolutely. I've used it with a couple of people that are diagnosed with some developmental disabilities, and it's worked well for them. Again, I think it's an individual kind of client thing. Is it for everyone? No, but it's up to the therapist and the client to figure out if it's a good fit for that client. Some of my clients, especially some of my young teenagers, like to kind of take control of it too. So often we will kind of go through the therapist guide together, and they will do a lot of the reading of what's on these cards. Like they will say, okay, now I need to picture the worst part of that in my head. And I think that gives them a sense of empowerment over the process too. So often if they want to go for it, I give this to them, and obviously I facilitate the session, but I allow them to kind of read through it and take that sense of control. So I think that's it for now. I've gotten a lot of great feedback from it. People are using it in all different countries. I've sold it to Germany, to clinicians in Germany, clinicians in Italy, Turkey, Latin American countries, where else? Some Asian countries. So it's exciting. I mean, the feedback that I've gotten is that clients and clinicians have found it very helpful. Also, some consultation groups have been using it because this is such a directive way to learn the methodology and to become comfortable with it. So I know some consultation groups have used it and have had success with newly trained clinicians, feeling kind of enhancing their comfort level, engaging any client with EMDR, but particularly their youngest clients. And most recently, I am going to be doing a piece of research on if this enhances clinician comfort level and enhances their engagement with younger clients in the EMDR process, and that if that in turn has a relationship to the client's level of engagement with the EMDR process. So I'm excited to put out that piece of research. Hopefully it'll be done in about 6 months or a year. So as soon as I get those results, I will get them to you. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I love to talk about it. I love the work that we do. I'm honored to be part of the community, because the therapeutic community, but also the EMDR community, because I really believe how helpful it is for so many clients. And I think the younger the clients are and we start using this, the faster the processing is what I've seen. So I'm a believer, and I hope you become one too. My website for this is emdrjourney.com, and you can find all my contact information on there. Again, my name's Deborah Courtney, and don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.